It was all part of the aging. Of course, the sword's got another 15 years of natural aging on it.
Right.
But it did start off with an aged finish anyhow.
Okay, so that's the center point.
Yep. Now, the tip on this one's really rounded, so you could just run that point further out if you wanted. Just a matter of whether you want it blunt or sharp blunt.
This blunt is great.
Yep.
I'm going to go with exactly that. Okay.
So
off to the base.
Side. I'd pay to flip it over and check whether that distance there is the same on the other side. That's pretty close. It's pretty close. So what happens is if your fuller is a little bit off one side to the other, suddenly that edge can get really narrow, right, and that becomes really obvious.
Yeah.
That's looking good.
So I left a little more material on the outside edge.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's again, we have...
Yep, you've got latitude to alter things.
Awesome. All right.
But at least it's symmetrically non-centered.
Right, yes.
It's a little bit wider that side, and it's a little bit wider there, rather than that being wide and that being wide, which obviously would be... So what's happened is that your fuller is centered, but your edge isn't.
Yes.
So that's easy, that can just be ground.
Okay.
Until it looks right, and... Yeah.
Which machine do we start on?
Okay, the next step will be use this flat plate.
Okay.
So that's another reason why the arms on these machines is long.
Right.
Because then you can have a really long flat plate for doing straight edges on swords.
I gotcha. Okay.
And yeah, just work on that. Then I think we'll switch to a finer belt. Okay. Just getting rid of those coarse marks. Yep. Knock off those sharp edges. Okay. And after that we can mark out for your edge grind. Okay. You're doing the tip, you're doing that pretty much exactly the way I do it.
That's cool. It's clear you're imbuing me mentally with the into it.
But then again, you've got a lot of experience doing other stuff.
I do.
That translates.
I love learning new skills. This is maybe my favorite one I can get learned. This is awesome. Very exciting watching this come into. All right.
Okay. Well, we might as well go to the desk and mark out for your edge grinds.
So what I want to do is I want to mark this exactly halfway up that edge. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe something a bit broader.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little engineer's trick that most people don't seem to know.
The using your fingers?
Yeah.
I've used it up to 6 inches. All right, so what's next?
So you mark the centre line on there, so that means when you're grinding you'll have a reference to know how close you're getting.
Right.
Then the next thing will be to mark how far you want to grind in each edge. So obviously up here you want to grind pretty much up, right up to the ridge of the fuller. Down here you actually need to grind across the ridge of the fuller.
Oh.
And then in the final bit, as this grind comes through here, that will actually turn that into a nice point.
Oh.
And then you continue the grind around here. So actually what happens is say you're going to use that as your grinding mark. There's where your fuller finishes. You'll get something like this happening, and then continue your grind. No, maybe not like that. Maybe more like that. When you do it on this other side and you grind that,
you'll get the fuller.
You get the and as you're grinding across there, you're bringing this ridge line of the grind back to a centre. Because you're doing it, as long as you're doing it symmetrically, you end up with a nice straight tip.
Would you do the mark for me?
Sure. So since we know that we want to, I need to mark just a little bit outside the fuller. It's easy to, once you've got your grind, you can start checking it by eye. But this just means that you're not accidentally going to take your grinding and going a little bit too far here.
I see.
And then have to figure out how to fix it.
Okay.
And you'll see that this is where the tapered fuller comes from. It's the second grind that you do. What this also does is because you're cutting in across the ridge line, it's getting thinner from there to there, and then it comes back to full thickness here.
Right.
And this is a thing called distal taper in a sword. And what that does is it means that your sword has less metal up here, which means the tip of the sword is lighter, which means your pommel doesn't need to be so heavy to give you the balance you want. Right. And it's one of those key things for sword making that if you don't get it right, say for example, some people would grind this to keep the ridge full thickness.
Yeah.
And what that will result in is this blade that's pretty heavy. And then you need to have a really heavy pommel to try and counterbalance that. So for every bit of weight that's left in the blade that's not helping you, you need at least twice that much in the pommel. And it all adds up really, really quickly. And this is only a reference, so that as you're grinding, if you just keep checking occasionally, you'll find that...
It gives you an insight, so you can tell how much...
Yeah, and then you reach a point where you're judging it by eye, not by the line. If you take it too far, the line can actually become deceptive. It can give you a bit of a false sense of security about what you're grinding.
Right.
Yep, so the next thing will be get a bigger contact wheel than you did the filler with. Now, in the case of the Strider sword, that was done with a 4-inch contact wheel.
Okay.
And what it does, it just gives you a shallower groove.
And I'm still using the bench guide?
Yep, you'll be doing that using the rest. So, and what happens, if I sketch this out, so here was your original block of aluminium. So you've cut the fillers. Here's your centre line. And we imagine that, say, this is up near the shoulder of the blade. What this grind does here is it brings you out to an edge here which might be a 1/16 of an inch thick. Okay. And then then the final thing for, say, a film prop, you put a little bevel on the edge and just form a sort of a bullnose profile, and that gives you your secondary bevel. Okay. And the profile of this circle here is, you see that the blade is still gradually thickening as you go across?
Yeah.
At no point do you want it to start doing this, because suddenly you've got a built-in weak point.
Oh, right, yes.
And so that's all done by judging the size of wheel that you use.
And in this case, what that's describing is that's a part of a curve of a 4-inch diameter.
Exactly. With a smaller contact wheel, that curve might have been more like that. Yeah. So you can actually remove more metal, you have a more flexible blade, because a lot of your strength is coming from the metal that's on the outer part of the blade. So if you were, say, to cut that in a little bit deeper, you'd have a lighter blade, but it would lose a lot of stiffness. Right. This doesn't matter on aluminium, but on a steel blade, it's really critical about that balance between stiffness, the flexibility you might want, cutting weight down, but not making it so light that you remove the strength that you need. You know, back in the days when people's lives depended on these little design details made all the difference. Sometimes people lived and died here. Another thing that Distal Taper will do, and I'll show it to you on this one. So this is a Boromir sword. This is the Boromir sword, of course. This is awesome. Yeah, it's heavy. It weighs about 4 pounds, which is quite heavy for a one-handed sword. But the balance point is right about here. So it's not trying to bend your wrist too much. But this is a good example of Distal Taper, because it's about 5 millimetres or 3/16 of an inch thick there. It gets about 2/3 the thickness here, and then comes back up to full thickness. Wow. And if I can have it back, whoa! Alright, I've done this a few times. But what this shows is, you notice how it's curving fairly evenly? Yeah. Now, if it wasn't for that Distal Taper, it wouldn't curve evenly, which would mean that you would have points that are built more strongly than they need to be and aren't doing anything, they're just adding weight. So, say if we built that with a grind just following the edge of that ridge line, it would be a lot stiffer than it needs to be up here. It would be stiff here, and sometimes the blades tend to curve a bit more in the middle, because as you put stress on them, it's... This is not heat treatment too much. That happen. Alright, I want to hold this one. It feels so good. Yeah. Same look at the bench. And this is what I mean about the evolution of the blade as you're grinding it. So like with a steel blade, I'd be grinding it, and then I'll be doing things like tweaking it. So once I've heat treated it from the rough grind, I can start tweaking it to get the sort of the bend radius I want, get the weight feeling right, remove excess weight where I can, without suddenly getting the blade will just go in one spot, because obviously that's then become too weak. Amazing. That's really cool. Yes. The balance is something that's really lovely to feel, because you don't ever feel that on swords. No, this is always a problem that you'll get, without naming any particular company. A lot of them do it. It's dictated because they've got a price point they're trying to meet. So they're making their blades out of something like 420 stainless carbon steel, which is a reasonably good steel. The way they machine the blades, often the blades have a fair bit of weight in them, and then where I would be using a steel crossguard and pommel to get the balance and help the balance, when you use zinc alloys, quite often, depending on what mix you use, some of them are a lot lighter. So you'll have a relatively heavy blade, because they don't have the time to machine it to within an inch of its life, and a relatively light hilt. So the weight may be the same as the original sword, but the balance is all wrong. Got it. And I mean, that's the difference between something that's made to look at and something that these swords, if I put an edge on them, they're ready for fighting. Yeah. Wow. All right. I think it's time to grind. Yes. Yeah. If you were to use it like that, what will happen is that it'll jam underneath, and next thing you know, you've ground a huge chunk out of your blade. So it's important that you have your blade sort of upright, maybe a little bit that way, maybe a little bit that way. But it means that any force that the grinding is doing is it's just pushing it onto the plate. These are lessons learnt the hard way.